Hello students, welcome to the political science class. Today's topic is center state relations, administrative and financial. As all of you know, we have a federal structure government. Therefore, in case of India, we have two sets of government, one is at the union and other is at the state. And the constitution of India provides a dual polity with a clear division of powers between the union and the states, each being supreme within the sphere allotted to it. In order to avoid conflict between union and the state government, there has been provision that there should be dual set of government, one will function at the center and the other will function at the provinces. And for that reason, there has been also distribution of powers between the union and center at the constitution. The Indian Federation is not the result of an agreement between independent units, and the units of Indian Federation cannot leave the federation. The constitution also provides that the units which is constituted Indian Federation, they are not independent and they cannot secede from the Indian Union at any time. Thus, the constitution contains elaborate provisions to regulate the various dimensions of the relations between the center and the state. For that purpose, the Constitution of India regulates all types of the relations between the center and the state, and whatever functions has to be discharged by the union and what are the functions has to be discharged by the state, it has been clearly mentioned in the Constitution. आमे समस्ते जानिचे भारत रे आमर गोटे संघीय व्यवस्था अछि। ए संघीय व्यवस्था को आमे किपरि अनुभव करूछु ना जेहेतु केंद्र रे गोटे केंद्र सरकार रहिछि एवं राज्य रे गोटे राज्य सरकार रहिछि एवं केंद्र और राज्य सरकार को मध्य रे समन्वय रक्षा करिबा पई आमर भारतर संविधान रे सांविधानिक व्यवस्था रहिछि, क्षमतार बंटन रहिछि एवं दुईटी जाक सरकार निज निजर परिसर भितरे किपरि कार्य करिवे सेथिपई सांविधानिक स्वीकृति सहित व्यवस्था मध्य रहिछि। The relations between center and state are divided as legislative relations, administrative relations and financial relations. केंद्र और राज्य भितरे किपरि संपर्क स्थापन हबो ताहाकु मुख्यतः तीन भाग रे विभक्त करा जायछि, व्यवस्थापिका संपर्क, कार्यपालिका संपर्क एवं आर्थिक संपर्क. Chapter 2 of the Part 11 from Article 256 to 63 of the Constitution of India describes the administrative relations between the union and the states. आमर संविधान रो एकादश भाग रे द्वितीय चैप्टर रे धारा 256 रु 263 पर्यंत केंद्र और राज्य भितर थिबा प्रशासनिक संपर्क को वर्णना करिछि एवं एही वर्णना रे प्रथमे राज्य गुड़िक किपरि केंद्र प्रति आनुगत्य प्रदर्शन करिवे एवं केंद्र को समय रे राज्य गुड़िक निर्देश प्रदान करिवो ताहा स्पष्ट भाव रे उल्लेख अछि. Article 256 of the Indian Constitution describes the powers of the states should be so exercised to ensure compliance to the laws made by the union. आमर धारा 256 कहूची राज्य गुड़िक केंद्र प्रति आनुगत्य प्रदर्शन करिवे एवं केंद्र जहाँ निर्देश दिबो राज्य गुड़िक ताहा मानिबे एवं आमर संविधान रे मध्य केंद्र और राज्य भितर थिबा क्षमता बंटनर व्यवस्था रहिछि जहाको आमे क्षमता बंटन बोली कहूछु. द डिविजन ऑफ पावर्स, द यूनियन गवर्नमेंट हैज एक्सक्लूसिव executive powers over the union list. Similarly, the state has over state list. Over concurrent list, the union government and the state government exercise parallel executive powers. आमर जेतेबेले पढ़ा जाउथला व्यवस्थापिका संपर्क सेतेबेले पिला माने तुम मान को कुहा जायथिला जे आमर तीनोटी तालिका अछि, केंद्र तालिका, राज्य तालिका एवं युग्म तालिका एवं एही तालिका रे आईन प्रणयनर बंटन करा जायछि केंद्र और राज्य मध्यरे एवं सही परि प्रशासनिक संपर्क संक्रांत रे जेउ विषय वस्तु गुड़िक केंद्र तालिका रे अंतर्भुक्त ताहार संपूर्ण प्रशासनिक क्षमता केंद्र सरकार हाथ में रहिबो एवं जेउ विषय वस्तु गुड़िक राज्य तालिका रे अंतर्भुक्त ताहार प्रशासनिक क्षमता राज्य सरकार हाथ में रहिबो एवं जो विषय वस्तु गुड़िक युग्म तालिका रे अंतर्भुक्त हेछि सेही विषय वस्तु उपरे उभय केंद्र एवं राज्य प्रशासनिक दायित्व निर्वाह करिवे. सेंटर स्टेट रिलेशंस ड्यूरिंग नॉर्मल टाइम्स. Executive powers of state be exercised in compliance with union laws. Whatever laws has been made by the union government, accordingly the state will exercise the executive powers. Article 256 lays down that the executive power of every state shall be so exercised as to ensure compliance with the laws made by Parliament and any existing laws which apply in that state, and the executive power of the Union shall extend to the giving of such directions to a state as may appear to the Government of India to be necessary for that purpose. ଯେତେବେଳେ ସାଧାରଣ ସମୟ ରହିଥିବ ସେହି ସମୟରେ କ୍ଷମତା ବଣ୍ଟନ ସମ୍ପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣ ଭାବରେ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟ କରିବ। କେନ୍ଦ୍ର ସରକାର ତାଙ୍କର ପରିସର ଅଧୀନରେ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟ କରିବେ, ରାଜ୍ୟ ସରକାର ମଧ୍ୟ ତାଙ୍କ ପରିସର ଅଧୀନରେ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟ କରିବେ ଏବଂ ଯଦି ଆବଶ୍ୟକ ପଡ଼େ କେନ୍ଦ୍ର ଯଦି ରାଜ୍ୟ ସରକାରଙ୍କୁ କୌଣସି ନିର୍ଦ୍ଦେଶ ପ୍ରଦାନ କରୁଛି ତାହେଲେ ସେଗୁଡ଼ିକ ରାଜ୍ୟ ସରକାର ମାନିବେ, ଅନ୍ୟଥା କେନ୍ଦ୍ର ତାର ବିଷୟବସ୍ତୁ ଉପରେ ପ୍ରଶାସନିକ ଦାୟିତ୍ୱ ନିର୍ବାହ କରିବ, ରାଜ୍ୟ ତାର ବିଷୟବସ୍ତୁ ଉପରେ ପ୍ରଶାସନିକ ଦାୟିତ୍ୱ ନିର୍ବାହ କରିବ। Executive powers of state not to interfere with the executive power of the union. At any cost, the state or the provinces of the federation cannot interfere in the powers of the union. Union can interfere in the powers of the state, but state cannot interfere in the powers of the union. Article 257 of the Constitution provides that the executive power of every state shall be so exercised as not to impede or prejudice the exercise of the executive power of the union, and the executive power of the union shall extend to giving up such directions to a state as may appear to the Government of India to be necessary for that purpose. In short, the union government can issue directions to the state government even with regard to the subjects enumerated in the state list. आमर राज्य तालिकार जो विषयवस्तु गुड़िक अच्छी केते गुड़िए विशेष परिस्थिति रे केन्द्र चाहिए से हस्तक्षेप प्रदान करि जमतीक आमर जदि जातीय स्वार्थ दृष्टि बा अंतर्जातीय चुक्ति स्वाक्षर कौन प्रकार आवश्यकता पड़ुची ताहले राज्य तालिकार अंतर्भुक्त होता विषयवस्तु उपरे केन्द्र आईन प्रणयन करि किंतु कौन परिस्थिति रे केन्द्र तालिकार अंतर्भुक्त होता विषयवस्तु उपरे राज्य सरकार आईन प्रणयन करिपारिबे नाही। Maintain means of communication of national or military importance. The union government can give directions to the state with regard to construction and maintenance of the means of communication declared to be of national or military importance. The union government can interfere in the state government's administration and can also give directions on various occasions. One occasion is that for the maintenance of means of communication which is running through the state, the center or the union can give directions to the state. If any places or anything which is of military importance, then that can also be maintained by the state governments. Then the protection of the railways. Union can issue state governments necessary directions regarding the measures to be taken for the protection of the railways within the jurisdiction of the state. It may be noted that the expenses incurred by the state governments for the discharge of these functions have to be reimbursed by the union government. Generally, the railways and the national ways are going to be maintained by the union government, but it runs through the state governments. So, state government has the power to maintain that, and if any expenses arises out of that, then that can be reimbursed by the union government in future, but that has to be maintained by the state government, and the union government will give directions to the state government to do that. To ensure welfare of the scheduled tribes in the states. Generally in the states there has been various scheduled tribal peoples are inhabiting, and for the welfare of them the center can give directions to the state governments. Union can direct the state governments to ensure execution of schemes essential for welfare of the scheduled tribes in the states. Whether it is the plans and projects of the Government of India or any state government, it has to be carried out by the state. To secure instruction in the mother tongue at the primary stages of education, Union can direct the state government to secure the provisions of adequate facilities for instruction in the mother tongue at the primary stage of education to children belonging to linguistic minority groups. So, generally the minority groups feel alienated. In order to protect them or in order to provide security to them, their language, their script, their culture should be protected. So, for that purpose the union government can give directions to the state government to provide primary education through mother tongue or through the mother language, and the state governments has also to take special steps or initiatives for that purpose, and particularly for the protection of the language of the minority. To ensure development of the Hindi language, Union government can direct the state governments to ensure the development of the Hindi language. As the Hindi language is connecting maximum number of the people in India, so Union government can give instructions to the state governments to give more emphasis upon the Hindi language. So, the Union government can give directions to the state governments under certain grounds, and the state government are obligatory to perform those type of the functions. To ensure government of a state is carried on in accordance with the provision of the constitution, Union can direct the state governments to ensure that the government of a state is carried on in accordance with the provisions of the constitution. If any state fail to comply with any directions given by the Union in exercise of its executive power, then President may hold that a situation has arisen in which the government of the state cannot be carried out in accordance with the provisions of the constitution. Thus, he may proclaim president's rule in that state. So, in order to provide dominance of the center over the state, there has been provision that when the governor or from any other sources the Union government come to know that the constitutional machinery of a state has fell down, then in that cases the president can use his emergency power to declare president's rule in that state under article 356. So, if at any cases any state government forbids to obey the rules or directions given by the Union, then in that cases the Union government can use its power to declare president's rule in that state under article 356. धारा 356 रे गोटे विशेष क्षमता राष्ट्रपति को प्रदान करा जायछि राज्य गुड़िकरे राष्ट्रपति शासन जारी करबा पई। तो जेते बेले कोनोसी राज्य सरकार केंद्र सरकार को निर्देश को मानिबा पई कि इच्छा प्रकाश करिवे नाही बा राज्य प्रति राज्य गुड़िक केंद्र प्रति सहयोग प्रदान करिवे नाही, ताले से समय केंद्र सरकार चाहिए तांकर से विशेष क्षमता प्रयोग करी से राज्य रे राष्ट्रपति शासन जारी करि पारिबे। Delegation of Union's functions to state. The President of India can entrust to the officers of the state certain functions of the Union government. However, before doing so, the President has to take the consent of the state government, but the Parliament can enact law authorizing the central government to delegate its function to the state government of its officers irrespective of the consent of such state government. On the other hand, a state may confer administrative functions upon the union with the consent of the union only. केते गुड़िए विशेष परिस्थिति रे मध्य केंद्र राज्य सरकार को निर्देश दे पारिबो बा केंद्र तार क्षमता को राज्य सरकार को हस्तांतर करि पारिबो। विशेष करके जेतेबेले जातीय जरूरीकालीन परिस्थिति जारी हुए धारा 352 रे एवं जेतेबेले राष्ट्रपति शासन जारी हुए धारा 356 रे सेही समय रे केंद्र सरकार तांकर कोनोसी प्रतिनिधि को राज्य रे अवस्थापित करि पारिबे एवं तांको माध्यम रे राज्यर प्रशासन को नियंत्रण करि पारिबे। एवं विशेष करके जेहेतु राज्यर राज्यपाल माने केंद्रर प्रतिनिधि भाव रे कार्य संपादन करंती, तेणु एही विशेष परिस्थिति रे केंद्र सरकार सेही मानक द्वारा कार्य संपादन करंती एवं राज्यपालक व्यतीत जदि अन्य कोनोसी अधिकारी को से क्षमता हस्तांतर करबा पई कि चाहिबे ताहाले केंद्र सरकार राज्यर स्वीकृति लोडी पारंती एवं सेथिरे राज्य स्वीकृति थाउ कि न थाउ केंद्र चाहिए जदि चाहिबो जदि अत्यावश्यक मने करिवो ताहाले केंद्रीय क्षमता को राज्यर पदस्थ अधिकारी मानक हस्तांतरित करि पारिबे। Appointment of high dignitaries. Union has major say in appointment and removal of governor, appointment of judges of High Court and members of State Public Service Commission. Besides this type of the powers, administration, in the appointment of the state government officials also, center also plays important role. Generally, the governors are going to be appointed by the President of India and the judges of High Court are also going to be appointed by the President of India. Not only appointment, their transfer, their service conditions are also going to be regulated by the Union government or by the President of India. So, regarding high appointment of the high dignitaries of the state governments, there has been a role of the Union government. Then provision of all India services. The presence of the all India services, the Indian Administrative Service, Indian Police Services further accords a predominant position to the Union government. The members of these services are recruited and appointed by the Union Public Service Commission. The members of these services are posted on key posts in the state but remain loyal to the Union government. So, if you will observe the dominance of the center, then we can found that at the state administration there has been also centers representatives are working. If you look at the all India services, then these all India services, they are appointed in all the key positions of the state government, starting from the district collector up to the our highest post, that is the chief secretary, and they are appointed by the Union Public Service Commission, which is an organization controlled by the Union government, but they serve at the state level and their service conditions are going to be controlled by the Union government. So, if they are involved in any type of the corrupted activities or misappropriation, then state government can't take any type of the actions against them, but only it can recommend such type of the actions, but the Union government will take it. So, this type of the provisions reflect that center's dominance prevails in the Indian Federation. जदि आमे एई सब व्यवस्था को पर्यालोचना करिबा ताहाले लक्ष्य करिबा राज्य सरकार रे अवस्थापित समस्त प्रकारर कर्मचारी मुख्य कर्मचारी माने केंद्र द्वारा नियुक्त एवं केंद्र द्वारा नियंत्रित, जेपरि कि हमर राज्यपाल एवं हमर मुख्य शासन सचिव एवं जिला स्तर रे जिलापाल मध्य से माने केंद्र द्वारा नियुक्ति होती एवं केंद्र सेमानकर चाकरी सत्तावली को नियंत्रण करे, किंतु सेमाने राज्य सरकार को अधीन रे कार्य करंती. Union to adjudicate interstate river water dispute. The Parliament has been vested with power to adjudicate any dispute or complaint with respect to the use, distribution or control of the waters or in any interstate rivers or river valley. In this regard, the Parliament also reserves the right to exclude such disputes from the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court or other courts. There has been provision that if there has been any dispute, river dispute generally with the state, within the state or interstate, then that all has to be resolved by the Union government or through the Supreme Court. So, in that cases, if possible, Union government can give directions to the respective states to resolve the conflict through discussion, or even the center can also have an alternative decisions or directions to the respective state. अंतःराज्य जल विवाद जदि देखा दिए नदी जल विवाद, ताहले से क्षेत्र रे मध्य केंद्र सरकार चाहिए राज्य सरकार को हस्तक्षेप करि पारिबे एवं निर्देश मध्य प्रदान करि पारिबे. Then we will come to discuss about the center-state relations during emergency conditions. So far we have discussed about the center-state relations during the normal times. आमे ए पर्यंत जो आलोचना कले सेटा होछि साधारण समय रे केंद्र और राज्यर संपर्क किपरि रहिबो, किंतु ता व्यतीत जेतेबेले हमर जरूरीकालीन परिस्थिति जारी हेबो ताले से समय रे केंद्र और राज्यर संपर्क कोन रहिबो आमे आलोचना करिबा. Under President's rule, under Article 356, the state governments cannot ignore the directions of the Union government, otherwise the President can take the action against the government of the state, stating that the administration cannot be carried on in the accordance with the provisions of the Constitution and thus can impose President's rule on the states. In such an eventuality, the President shall assume to himself all or any of the functions of the state government. जेतेबेले राज्य रे राष्ट्रपति शासन जारी हेबो सेतेबेले राज्य सरकारଙ୍କର समस्त क्षमता प्रशासनिक व्यवस्थापिक क्षमता केंद्र हाथ को चली जिवो एवं केंद्र साधारणतः तांकर प्रतिनिधि बा राज्यपालଙ୍କ अधीन रे राज्यर प्रशासनिक कार्य को संपादन करिथांती एवं से समय रे राज्य सरकारଙ୍କର जेकोनोसी निष्पत्ति केंद्र सरकारଙ୍କର अनुमोदन नेबा बिना कार्यकारी हेई पारिबो नाही. Under the proclamation of national emergency under Article 352, the power of the Union to give directions extends to the executive power of the state is to be exercised relating to any matter. It is thus evident that in the administrative sphere, the states cannot act in complete isolation and have to work under the directions and in cooperation with the center. जेतेबेले आमर भारत रे जातीय जरूरीकालीन परिस्थिति धारा 352 रे जारी हेबो. एही जातीय जरूरीकालीन परिस्थिति जारी हेबार साधारणतः दुईटी कारण थाईपारे गोटे हूँ जितेबाला आमर बाह्य आक्रमण हुए एवं अन्यटी हूँ जितेबाला आभ्यंतरीण मान देश भितर जो कौन विशृंखला देखा दिए बा सरकार विरुद्ध रे विद्रोह हुए ताले सेतेबेले सरकार चाहिए आमर जातीय जरूरीकालीन परिस्थिति जारी करें एवं जितेबाला जातीय जरूरीकालीन परिस्थिति जारी हम जदि समग्र भारतवर्ष पाई यह जारी होची ताले राज्य सरकार गुड़िक संपूर्ण क्षमता शून्य हो जाती एवं समस्त प्रकार क्षमता केंद्र सरकार हाथ को चली जाए एवं से समय संघीय व्यवस्थार कौन प्रकार परिचय देखा मिले ना यह संपूर्ण ऐक्यिक राष्ट्र में परिणत होता है कहीं ना सबु प्रकार निष्पत्ति केवल गोटे सरकार बा केंद्र सरकार ग्रहण करिथांती। Then we will come to discuss about the center-state financial relations. For a healthy federal setup, it is essential to have a balanced financial relations between the center and states. As you know, finance is the basis of everything. Whatever plans and projects we may do, if we lack finances or resources, then we cannot implement it in a right way. So, all type of the developmental activities need resources. So, a healthy financial relations should be maintained between the center and the state. And for that purpose, in the constitution, there has been provision of financial relation between the center and state. Part 12, Article 268 to 293 of the Indian Constitution deals with the provisions of financial relations between the center and state. Indian Constitution has made elaborate provisions relating to the distribution of the taxes as well as non-tax revenues and the power of borrowing supplemented by provisions for grants and aid by the union to the states. आमर गोटे सुस्थ केंद्र राज्य संपर्क रक्षा करबा पाई कि भारतर संविधान रे केंद्र और राज्य भितर आर्थिक संपर्कर वर्णना रही जहाँ संविधान द्वादश भाग धारा 268 रु 293 वर्णना करा जायछि एवं एथिरे संपूर्ण भाव में वर्णना होइछि केउं केउं करगुड़िक केंद्र निर्धारण करिवो केउं करगुड़िक राज्य निर्धारण करिवो एवं केउंठिरे उभय केंद्र एवं राज्यर भूमिका रहिबो। The Constitution divides the taxing powers between the center and the states as follows. संविधान निम्न उपाय रे केंद्र और राज्य मध्यरे कर क्षमता को विभाजन करिछि। The Parliament has exclusive power to levy taxes on subjects enumerated in the Union list. The state legislature has exclusive power to levy taxes on subjects enumerated in the state list. Both can levy taxes on the subjects enumerated in the concurrent list, whereas residuary power of taxation lies with Parliament only. So, as there has been distribution of powers between the center and state in 3 lists, so accordingly taxing power has also been distributed between the center and state in this 3 lists. So, what are the powers or the subjects which has not been mentioned in above 3 lists, that has to be mentioned in the residuary power, and that is rested upon the Parliament. So, whatever subjects are included in the union list, only the Parliament has to decide the tax, and the subjects mentioned in the state list, the state legislature will decide it, and the taxes which has been mentioned in the concurrent list, both has to decide, but the which has not been mentioned in any 3 lists, then that things has to be decided by the Parliament only. जेमती आमर केंद्र राज्यर क्षमता को 3टा तालिका भातर विभक्त करा जायछि एवं सही तालिका अनुसार मध्य कर संग्रहर क्षमता निर्धारण करा जाय। जो विषय वस्तु गुड़िक केंद्र तालिकार अंतर्भुक्त होइथिबो केवल सेथरु केंद्र सरकार कर आदाय करि पारिबे। जो विषय वस्तु गुड़िक राज्य तालिकार अंतर्भुक्त होइथिबो केवल राज्य सरकार सेथरु कर आदाय करि पारिबे एवं जो गुड़िक युग्म तालिकार होइथिबो उभय केंद्र एवं राज्य निर्धारण करिवे एवं जो गुड़िक 3टा तालिकार नाही से संक्रांतीय निष्पत्ति केवल केंद्र बहन करिबो। Distribution of the tax revenue. Duties levied by the union but collected and appropriated by the states. केते गुड़िए टैक्सेस अच्छी जोटा को निर्धारण करिवो केंद्र एवं संग्रह करिवो राज्य एवं खर्च करिवो राज्य। सेगुड़िक हेउछि स्टाम्प ड्यूटीज ऑन बिल्स ऑफ एक्सचेंज and excise duties on medical and toilet preparations containing alcohol. These taxes do not form the part of the consolidated fund of India, but are assigned to that state only. सेगुड़िक हूँ स्टाम्प ड्यूटी एवं एक्साइज ड्यूटी जहाँ को केवल केंद्र उपयोग केंद्र संग्रह केंद्र निर्धारण करिवो किंतु राज्य संग्रह करिवो एवं खर्च करिवो एवं एथिरे आमर भारतीय संचित पांठिर कौनसी प्रकार कर अंतर्भुक्त नुहे। Taxes levied as well as collected by the union but assigned to the states under article 269 केते गुडे टैक्सेस अछि जोटा केंद्र सरकार निर्धारण करिवे संग्रह करिवे मात्र राज्य सरकार को प्रदान करा जिवो and those type of the taxes include the sale and purchase of goods in the course of interstate trade or commerce or the taxes on the consignment of goods in the course of interstate trade or commerce तेनको जो goods को and communities which has been transferred through the interstate on the basis of that those taxes will be decided will be levied by the union will be collected by the union but it will be entirely goes to the state. Taxes levied and collected by the union and distributed between union and the states under article 270 केते गुडे कर अछि जोटा निर्धारण करिवो केंद्र संग्रह करिवो केंद्र मात्र ताहा केंद्र एवं राज्य भितरे बंटन हबो एवं सेगुडिक हेउछि इनकम टैक्स एंड सेंट्रल एक्साइज टैक्स आयकर एवं केंद्रीय अबकारी कर। In addition to the above, certain taxes are levied, collected and wholly appropriated by center itself. For example, revenues and from railway, post and telegraph, telephone, post office savings, foreign exchange and import export of goods. यह व्यतीत केते गुड़िया कर अछि जोटा संपूर्ण भाव में केंद्र सरकार धार्य करिवे बा निर्धारण करिवे संग्रह करिवे एवं खर्च मध्य करिवे सेगुड़िक हूँ जेगुड़िक संपूर्ण भाव में केंद्र तालिकार अंतर्भुक्त होता विषय वस्तु गुड़िक जेमती कि आमर रेलवे पोस्ट एवं टेलीग्राफ टेलीफोन एवं डाक विभाग में होता स्थायी जमा एवं फॉरेन एक्सचेंज एवं विभिन्न प्रकार एक्सपोर्ट गुड्स then surcharge on certain duties and taxes for the purpose of the union only केते गुडे surcharge tax अछि जहाँ केंद्र केवल निर्धारण करे एवं संग्रह करे एवं केंद्र मध्य ता निकटरे रखि थाए से गुडिक होछि द पार्लियामेंट हैज पावर टू इम्पोज सरचार्ज बट द स्टेट गवर्नमेंट कैन इम्पोज द सेम संसदर से क्षमता अछि सरचार्ज आदाय करि परिबो राज्य सरकार चाहिले तार निजस्व सरचार्ज मध्य आदाय करि परिबे जेमति कि हमर इनकम टैक्स ऊपर आ गोटे एजुकेशन सरचार्ज आदाय होछि सेहि परि भाबरे राज्य सरकार मध्य तांकर निजर सरचार्ज निज निर्धारण करि आदाय करि परिबे। Besides the distribution of revenue between the center and state according to the list, there has been also other provisions which is known as grants in aid for the purpose of maintaining financial relations between the center and state. ए तीनिटा तालिका रे हमर जो आर्थिक संपर्कर विभाजन व्यतीत आहुरी किछि गुडी अछि व्यवस्था अछि संविधान रे जेपरि कि हमर विभिन्न प्रकार ग्रांट्स सहायता अनुदान जोटा राज्य सरकार को बेले बेले केंद्र सरकार प्रदान करि थांती एवं सेही केंद्रीय सहायता प्रदान करिवार विभिन्न प्रकार कारण मध्य रहिछि एवं एटा किछि सहायता अछि जोटा संपूर्ण भाव में राज्य केंद्र सरकार इच्छाधीन एवं से राज्य सरकार को तांकर इच्छाधीन क्षमता उपयोग करी केउ राज्य को केते प्रदान करिवे सेटा निर्धारण करि थांती। Besides sharing of taxes between the center and states, the constitution provides for grants in aid to the states from the central resources under article 273. The states like Assam, Bihar, Odisha and West Bengal are given grants in aid by the center in lieu of export duty on jute and jute products. आमर जो सहायता अनुदान केंद्र सरकार प्रदान करिवे धारा 273 अनुसार ताहा तांकर केंद्र जो राजस्व संग्रह करे संपूर्ण सही राजस्व ताहा विनियोग हबो एवं सेही परि गोटे अनुदान हेउची आमर आसाम बिहार एवं ओडिशा परि राज्य को झोट द्रव्यर विपणन पाई किछि अनुदान प्रदान करा जाय थाए एवं ताहा केंद्र निर्धारण करती केउ राज्य को केते अनुदान प्रदान करिवो ताहा संपूर्ण भाव में राज्य केंद्र सरकार निर्धारण करथांती। स्पेसिफिक ग्रांट्स आर आल्सो गिवन टू प्रमोट द वेलफेयर ऑफ द शेड्यूल्ड ट्राइब्स इन ए स्टेट और टू रेज the level of administration of the scheduled areas therein under Article 275. There has been provision that the center can give directions to the state for the welfare of the scheduled tribes to the state governments. So, for the welfare of the scheduled tribes, if any plans or projects are going to be carried out by the concerned states, for that purpose, whatever extra amount has to be spent by the state governments, that can be bear by the union government. So, union government can give grants for the promotion of welfare and development of the scheduled tribe people. आदिवासी अधिष्ठित अंचल रे बसवास करुथिबा लोकमानंकर अभिवृद्धि पाई जो जनमंगल कार्यक्रम राज्य सरकार प्रस्तुत करती बा कार्य करती ता पाई जदि राज्य राजस्व उपर अधिका व्यय पड़े ताहले से व्ययभार को मध्य केंद्र सरकार बहन करबा पाई कि प्रस्तुत थांती। Besides, there has been discretionary grants also there. Center provides certain grants to the states on the recommendations of the Planning Commission, which are at the discretion of the union government. These are given to help the state financially to fulfill plan targets under Article 282. आमर विभिन्न प्रकार आयोग रही जमती कि जोटा आगुरी थिला प्लानिंग कमिशन एबे वर्तमान तार नाम परिवर्तन है कि नीति आयोग करा जायछि एवं एही नीति आयोग बेले बेले राज्यर अभिवृद्धि पाई विभिन्न प्रकार प्रस्ताव केंद्र को दे थाए किंतु नीति आयोगर प्रस्ताव को ग्रहण करने राज्य केंद्र सरकार संपूर्ण बाध्य नुहति जेहेतु एटा ताहांकर इच्छाधीन क्षमता तेणु से माने तांकर इच्छा अनुसार केंद्रीय अनुदान राज्य गुडी को प्रदान करि पारंती न करि पारंती मध्य तेणु जेतले प्लानिंग कमिशन बा वर्तमान नीति आयोग जेतले किछि अनुदान पाई केंद्र को सुपारिश करती ताहा राज्य केंद्र सरकार निजर इच्छाधीन क्षमता बल में किछि राज्य को प्रदान करि पारंती किछि राज्य को प्रदान न करि पारंती मध्य। Then we'll come to the provisions of financial relations during the financial emergency. During the financial emergency and the national emergency, there has been certain things has to be reserved by the union government. During national emergency, the president by order can direct that all provisions regarding division of taxes between union and states and grants in aids remain suspended. However, such suspension shall not go beyond the expiration of the financial year in which the proclamation ceases to operate. तेणुक जेमती आमे प्रशासनिक संपर्क किछि साधारण समय रे आलोचना करथिले एवं किछि जरूरीकालीन परिस्थिति समय आलोचना करथिले सेपरि आमर आर्थिक संपर्क मध्य साधारण समय रे गोटे प्रकार बलवत्तर रुहे एवं आमर जरूरीकालीन परिस्थिति समय गोटे प्रकार बलवत्तर रुहे एवं जेतेबेले जातीय जरूरीकालीन परिस्थिति देश में घोषणा करा जाए सेतेबेले राज्य सरकारंकर कौनसी क्षमता आउ रुहे नाही एवं यह संपूर्ण केंद्र सरकार अधीन को चली जाए थाए। सेहीपरि आर्थिक क्षमता क्षेत्र में राज्य सरकार निजस्व भाव में कौनसी आय व्यय करि पारंती नाही जहाँ केंद्र सरकार निष्पत्ति ग्रहण करती से अनुसार राज्य सरकार गुड़िक तांकर प्रशासनिक कार्य को निर्वाह करिथांती। And during financial emergency, union can give directions to the states to observe such canons of financial propriety as specified in the direction, to reduce the salaries and allowances of all people serving in connection with the affairs of the state, including high court judges, to reserve for the consideration of the president all money and financial bills after they are passed by the legislature of the state. आमर जातीय जरूरीकालीन क्षमता राष्ट्रपति शासन व्यतीत आउ गोटे जरूरीकालीन क्षमता राष्ट्रपति हाथ में न्यस्त अच्छी ताहा हेउछि आर्थिक जरूरीकालीन क्षमता जहाँ संविधान धारा 360 अनुसार घोषणा करा जाय थाए एवं जेतेबेले जातीय जरूरीकालीन परिस्थिति घोषणा समय मध्य राज्यगुड़िकर कौनसी आर्थिक क्षमता रुहे नाही एवं जेतेबेले स्पेसिफिकाली आर्थिक जरूरीकालीन क्षमता जारी हुए साधारणतः आर्थिक जरूरीकालीन क्षमता जितेबाला जारी हेब सेतेबाला देशर आर्थिक व्यवस्था संकट रे थिबो। भारत रे ए पर्यंत आर्थिक जरूरीकालीन क्षमता जारी है ना किंतु जदि केतेबेले आर्थिक जरूरीकालीन क्षमता जारी हुए ताहले राज्य सरकार समस्त अर्थ चिठा आर्थिक चिठा केंद्र सरकार निकट को प्रेरण करा जिवो एवं केंद्र सरकार ताको अनुमोदन कले ही सही आर्थिक चिठा गुड़िक गृहीत हेबो। ता व्यतीत राज्य रे कार्य करुथिबा सरकारी कर्मचारी राज्य सरकार को अधीन हुंतु बा केंद्र सरकार को अधीन हुंतु सेमानकर दरमा एवं भत्ता को कम करा जाय पारे। एमिति कि आमर उच्च अदालत रे कार्य करुथिबा विचारपति मानकर दरमा भत्ता को मध्य कमे दिया जाय पारे। ता सहित केंद्र आर्थिक नियमितता अवलंबन करबा पई राज्य सरकार को निर्देश दे पारंती। Then there is also the provision of financial commission for the betterment of the relations between the center and the state. For the purpose of allocation of certain resources of revenue between the union and the state governments, the constitution provides for the establishment of a finance commission in every 5 years under Article 280. Under Article 280, there is provision that constitutional provision is that the President of India can form a finance commission in every 5 years to review the financial relations between the center and state. केंद्र एवं राज्य मध्य आर्थिक संपर्क को नियंत्रण करने एवं से संक्रांत उपदेश प्रदान करने भारतर राष्ट्रपति गोटे आर्थिक आयोग प्रत्येक 5 वर्ष गठन करिथांती। It makes recommendations regarding the distribution of financial resources between the union and the states. It also recommends the criteria which governs the method of distribution of net proceeds of taxes between center and the states. It also makes recommendations as to the principles which should govern the grants in aid of revenue of the states out of the consolidated fund of India. तो ये जो आर्थिक आयोग गठन करा जीवो आर मुख्य कार्य गुड़िक हेउछि एहा केंद्र एवं राज्य भितर थिबा आर्थिक संपर्क एवं रक्षा करबा पई एवं आर्थिक बंटन पई मध्य प्रस्ताव देई पारे एवं केउ नियम अनुसार केंद्र एवं राज्यर कर आदाय नियंत्रण करा जीवो से नियम निर्धारण संक्रांत रे प्रस्ताव मध्य ग्रहण करि पारे बा केंद्र सरकार को देई पारे एवं केउ नीति अनुसार केंद्र सरकार राज्य गुड़ी को अनुदान प्रदान करेंगे से नीति संक्रांत प्रस्ताव मध्य आर्थिक आयोग केंद्र को दे पारे। Besides, there is also the provision of CAG or Comptroller and Auditor General of India. भारत रे जने हिसाब महानिरीक्षक और महापरिदर्शक रहिबे ए प्रकार व्यवस्था मध्य रहिছে। The Comptroller and Auditor General of India is appointed by the President which makes a proper audit of the income and expenditures of both the center and the states. आमर भारतर संविधान रे व्यवस्था रही राष्ट्रपति जने कंट्रोलर एंड ऑडिटर जनरल को नियुक्ति देवे एवं तांकर कार्य होची से केंद्र एवं राज्य सरकार किपरि आर्थिक व्यापार को नियंत्रण करुचंती अर्थगुड़ी को किपरि खर्च करुचंती एवं यार संपूर्ण आय व्ययर हिसाब रखा होची तांकर दायित्व। It also prescribes the pro forma and method in which the states can maintain their income and expenditure account. The states are bound to follow the directions of the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. तेणु आर्थिक अनियमितता रोकवा होची कंट्रोलर ऑडिटर जनरल प्राथमिक दायित्व। तो से कि यह राज्य गुड़ी को निर्देश देवे केउ प्रकार प्रोफर्मा से अवलंबन करेंगे जो थे से हिसाब रखिए केते केन्द्र रु से आनिले राजस्व आनिले एवं केउ केउ उपाय ताकू व्यय कले बा खर्च कले एवं सेटा ठीक भाव में से हिसाब को से ठीक भाव में रखुचंती कि नहीं ताकू निरीक्षण करबा ताकू तदारख करबा होची हिसाब निरीक्षकंकर परिदर्शकंकर कार्य ता सहित से जहाँ भी निर्देश देवे अर्थ संक्रांत रे सबु राज्य सरकार गुड़िक ताकू मानिबा पई कि बाध्य अटंती। Then we'll conclude, but before going to conclusion, first we'll analyze the relations between the center and state, how it is existing in India. So whatever provisions we have discussed till now, whether it is administrative relation or financial relation, we can come to conclusion that always our constitution gives emphasis upon more powers of the center and less powers to the state. In normal times, the center can function normally, the state can function normally, but while there has been special provisions, then at that time the center becomes dominant. And in the administrative sphere, we can found though administration power or executive power has been distributed between the union and center or union and the state, but still in special circumstances always the union dominates the state, and there is also provision whatever directions will be given by the union that has to be carried out by the state. And the provisions of the national emergency, provisions of the president's rule makes the states obligatory towards the center, and the provisions of all India services, provisions of the governors, provisions of the judges, provisions of the particularly high court judges, and provisions of all important officials recruited by the union government like election commission, all things reflects that we have a strong center and weak provinces or weak state, and there has been no ground under which a state or a province can secede from the India. So, in India the center state relations constitute the core elements of the federalism. The central government and state government cooperate for the well-being and safety of the citizens of India. Both the government work together in the field of environmental protection, terror control, family control and socio-economic planning. भारतरे केन्द्र राज्यर संपर्क को सुदृढ़ करने एवं संघीय व्यवस्था को सुदृढ़ करने संविधान समस्त प्रकार व्यवस्था करिछि। ता सत्वे आमर देखा जाउछि बेले बेले केन्द्र एवं राज्य गुड़िक भितर द्वंद्व सृष्टि होछि, कॉन्फ्लिक्ट आसुछि एवं ए कॉन्फ्लिक्ट किपरि न रहिबो, द्वंद्व किपरि न रहिबो सेथिपैं कि सांविधानिक व्यवस्था रहिछि, किंतु व्यवस्था एवं कार्यकारिता ता भितर बेले बेले फरक अनुभव करा जाय। कारण केते गुड़िए परिस्थिति रे जेते बेले आमर केन्द्र रे गोटे राजनैतिक दलर सरकार रही थाए एवं राज्य रे अन्य गोटे राजनैतिक दलर सरकार रही थाए, सेतेबेले साधारणतः संघीय व्यवस्था रे किछि असमानता बा जोटा को कहंती इम्बालांस देखिबाकू मिले एवं सेमानक भितर जेतले कॉन्फ्लिक्ट आसे सेटा आमर संघीय व्यवस्था प्रति गोटे आह्वान बड़ आह्वान एवं सेथिपैं आमर संविधानिक व्यवस्था जहाँ अच्छी ताको केंद्र सरकार हुंतु बा राज्य सरकार हुंतु केही दुरुपयोग करबा उचित नुहे। समस्ते समस्तंकर परिसर भितर रही कार्य निर्धारण करबा आवश्यक। द सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट एंड द स्टेट गवर्नमेंट cooperate for the well-being and safety of the citizens of India. So, the primary duty of every government, whether state government or the union government, should be for well-being of the citizens, welfare of the citizens, development of the citizens. So, every government should work in that sphere. So, there should not be competition for more power, whether it is union government or the state government, but their objective, their aim should be well-being of the nation, unity of the nation, integrity of the nation. If every government, whether union government or the state government, will work in that way, then we can avoid the conflict between the union and center, and we can maintain national unity and integrity in a real sense. So, there has been various new problems are arising presently, like environment problem, terrorism, and as we have a vastly populated country, so family planning or family control is a great issue. So, various socio-economic planning is also needed for the development of citizens as well as also eradication of poverty from our society. So, center and state should work wholeheartedly with cooperation and harmony for the environment protection, terror control, family control and socio-economic planning. The Indian Constitution aim at reconciling the national unity while giving some power to the state governments. It is true that union has been assigned larger powers than the state governments, reflecting a centralized federation, as all these essential features of a federation are present, but maintains unitary spirit in administration. Sometimes we criticize Indian federation as quasi-federal in nature, because nowhere in the constitution it has been mentioned that India is a federation, But why we refer it as the federation? Because we say that some of the features of the federation are present here, like we have a dual government, means one government at the union, other government at the state. We have bicameral legislature, the lower house and the upper house in the parliament, and we have a written constitution, and we have also distribution of power between the center and the state, and we have also independent and impartial judiciary system, but we lack double citizens, we have a single citizenship. So, almost all the features of Indian federation we have, but while we come to the functioning of the federation, then we lack that, because in almost all cases the directions of the center prevails over the state, and whether it is law making or administrative affairs or financial affairs, then center has more sphere in comparison to the state. So, this more sphere or dominance of the center loses the federal characteristics of the India. That is why we call it quasi federal in nature. But state government has given some powers, and in during the normal times state government also enjoys this type of the power. Though the union government has been assigned with the larger power, but the state government should give obligations towards the union, reflecting a centralized federation for the maintenance of the unity and integrity of the nation. So, why more powers has been vested upon the center? The main objective was to maintain unity and integrity of the nation. As we have a diversified state, आमर जेहेतु भारत हूँ एक देश जोटी विभिन्न प्रकार वैषम्यता देखा जाउछि एवं से वैषम्यता भितर एकता रक्षा करबा होछि बड़ कष्टकर व्यापार एवं से एकता को बजाय रखिबा पाई कि आमर गोटे दृढ़ केंद्र सरकार आवश्यकता रही एवं से दृढ़ केंद्र सरकार स्थापन करबा पाई कि केंद्र को अत्यधिक क्षमता प्रदान करा जायछि जहा द्वारा राज्य गुड़िक केंद्ररू विच्छिन्न हबा पाई कोनोसी सुजोग पाइबे नाही एवं गोटे संविधान एकक संविधान व्यवस्था अच्छी जहाँ केवल केंद्र हाथ में अच्छी संविधान संशोधन क्षमता केवल केंद्र सरकार हाथ में न्यस्त ए राज्यगुड़िकर कौन क्षमता ना तो यही सब क्षमता केंद्र हाथ में न्यस्त कर प्राथमिक उद्देश्य हूँ भारतर अखंडता को बजाय रखा तेणु से भारत को कहुए एक अर्ध संघीय व्यवस्था सो वी समटाइम्स सम रिफर इंडियन फेडरेशन आज federal in form, unitary in spirit. So, while it comes to the functioning, it becomes a unitary state. Then we will discuss why we are referring India as a strong center or centralized federation. भारत को आम कहीं गोटे केन्द्राभिमुखी संघीय व्यवस्था बोली कहवा आम से यार सबुगुड़िक संपर्क को आलोचना करवा आमर प्रथमे जिते आम पढ़ुले व्यवस्थापिका संपर्क बा लेजिस्लेटिव रिलेशन से जिते आम जो तीनटा तालिकार आईन प्रणयन को बंटन करा जायथिला केंद्र तालिका राज्य तालिका एवं युग्म तालिका से आम लक्ष्य करुले जे मुख्यतः जिते गुड़िए गुरुत्वपूर्ण विषय वस्तु अच्छी जेपरिक आमर अर्थ आमर वैदेशिक व्यापार आमर रेलवे ये सब गुड़िक केंद्र हाथ में न्यस्त एवं सर्वमोट 69टी विषय वस्तु केंद्र हाथ में न्यस्त थिला एवं राज्य तालिकार आमर 61टी एवं युग्म तालिकार 52टी विषय वस्तु थिला तेणुक 99 आइटम्स इन द यूनियन लिस्ट 61 आइटम्स इन द स्टेट लिस्ट 52 आइटम्स इन द concurrent list. So, as we are discussing frequently that whatever subjects has been mentioned in the union list only parliament will make law. Therefore, as the subjects are maximum here, therefore parliament has more power, and even in the subjects which has been mentioned in the concurrent list as both union and state is making and whatever directions will be given by the union that has to be carried by the state, therefore here also union government has more powerful or more power in comparison to the state. And besides there has been also another power which has been known as the residuary power and which is rested upon the union government or the parliament. And what is residuary power? Residuary power means the subjects which are not been mentioned in these three lists, but law is required to be made, then that is known as the residuary power and that is rested upon the union. तेणुक जो तीनटा तालिकार क्षमता बंटन होती व्यतीत जदि आउ कि नुआ आईन आवश्यकता पड़े मात्र से विषय वस्तुटा ए कौन तालिकार अंतर्भुक्त होना ताले से क्षमता केंद्र हाथ में न्यस्त और केंद्र से विषय आईन प्रणयन कर तेणु ये जो आईन प्रणयन क्षेत्र में आम पर्यालोचना करवा देखा केन्द्र ହେଉଛି ବହୁତ ଶକ୍ତିଶାଳୀ ବା କ୍ଷମତାଶାଳୀ ରାଜ୍ୟମାନଙ୍କ ଅପେକ୍ଷା। With regard to the administrative relation, center is more powerful because there has been provision of governors who are the chief executive of the state administration. They are appointed by the President of India, but they work under the state governments, and their transfer power also rested upon the President of India, and the provision of all India services and appointment of high dignitaries in the state governments are also going to be controlled by the union government. And with regard to the financial relations also, the center is more powerful as almost all the taxing powers rested upon the center, and center's collections revenue purview is more in comparison to the state. ତେଣୁକରି ପ୍ରଶାସନିକ ଏବଂ ଆର୍ଥିକ ସମ୍ପର୍କକୁ ଯଦି ଆମେ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟାଲୋଚନା କରିବା ତାହେଲେ ମଧ୍ୟ ଲକ୍ଷ୍ୟ କରିବା କେନ୍ଦ୍ର ଅଧିକ କ୍ଷମତାଶାଳୀ। ପ୍ରଶାସନିକ କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ଆମର ରାଜ୍ୟ ପ୍ରଶାସନର ଯିଏ ମୁଖ୍ୟ ରାଜ୍ୟପାଳ ସେ ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରପତିଙ୍କ ଦ୍ୱାରା ନିଯୁକ୍ତି ହୁଅନ୍ତି। ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରପତିଙ୍କ ଦ୍ୱାରା ଗୋଟେ ରାଜ୍ୟରୁ ଅନ୍ୟ ରାଜ୍ୟକୁ ସ୍ଥାନାନ୍ତରିତ ହୋଇଥାନ୍ତି ଏବଂ ଆଉ ସମସ୍ତ ପ୍ରକାରର ଅଧିକାରୀ ସରକାରୀ କର୍ମଚାରୀ ଉଚ୍ଚପଦସ୍ଥ ସରକାରୀ କର୍ମଚାରୀ ଯେପରିକି ସର୍ବଭାରତୀୟ ସେବା ଅଧିକାରୀମାନେ କେନ୍ଦ୍ର ସରକାରଙ୍କ ଦ୍ୱାରା ନିୟନ୍ତ୍ରଣ ହୁଅନ୍ତି ଏବଂ ଆର୍ଥିକ ସମ୍ପର୍କରେ ମଧ୍ୟ ରାଜସ୍ୱ ସଂଗ୍ରହର କ୍ଷେତ୍ର କେନ୍ଦ୍ରର ଅଧିକା ଅଟେ। ତେଣୁ ଏହିସବୁ କ୍ଷମତା ବଣ୍ଟନ ସାମ୍ବିଧାନିକ ଦୃଷ୍ଟିକୋଣରୁ ଆମେ ଯଦି ପର୍ଯ୍ୟାଲୋଚନା କରିବା ସମ୍ବିଧାନ ସ୍ପଷ୍ଟ ଭାବରେ କ୍ଷମତା ବଣ୍ଟନ କରିଥିଲେ ମଧ୍ୟ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟତଃ ବା ପ୍ରାକ୍ଟିକାଲି ଏହା କେନ୍ଦ୍ରକୁ ଅଧିକ ଶକ୍ତିଶାଳୀ କରିଛି। So, in case of India, we have a strong centralized federation as center enjoys more power in comparison to the state governments. And regarding to the constitutional amendment power, the state governments have no role to play. And if we come to the changing of the boundary of the state or changing of the name of the state, then that has also to be decided by the center. So, India reflects a centralized strong federation towards inclined to the center. And with this we are concluding the chapter administrative and financial relations of the India. Thank you.